Welcome back to Potential Impossibilities. I'm your host, Amanda Adams. And before we get into today's episode, I want to give you a little personal story and just a little asterisk preface about this episode, because it's a subject that's really personal to me. But this show is all about growth and inspiration and really learning to advocate for ourselves in everyday life. And so today's topic is about all sorts of things, but one of those things is breast implant illness. And in 2019, so it's been 6 years, in 2019, I got my implants out. I lived with implants from 2005 to 2019, and I felt like I had foreign objects in my body the whole time. It was not something that I ever wanted to do, but I did, married the wrong guy, got the wrong implants, and that's how life goes. But what I had learned in 2019 was that there were a lot of things going on with my own body that related back to my implants. And I went to my regular physician, did blood work, couldn't figure out what was going on. I had weight gain. I had food allergies. I had a lot of hormonal issues. My cycle was all messed up. And all of this led to me being a very emotional and depressed person. So now you're missing work, you're sleeping less, all of these things. And 2019 was probably the roughest year of my life. And I went to my physician and said, I don't know what's going on. And the blood work came back and we couldn't figure things out. I went to my OBGYN several times and same story. She even teared up in her office with me at one point and said, I don't know what's wrong, but the only thing I can think of is to do a hysterectomy. And that just scared me to death. So I started doing my own research. And this is when physicians probably look at us and say, please don't become Dr. Google because it's terrifying. But I started putting pieces together. I put my blood work into Google. This led me to looking at things like the weight gain and when did this start. And I'm a big fan of MyFitnessPal because I've used it my entire life. And so I was able to go back, and I went back to 2013. That's when the weight gain started. And that was when I had the second set of implants put in. So that got me really curious. And I started wondering, were these two things connected? So I found a Facebook group on breast implant illness, which I had never heard of. And I looked into it. And I went back to the surgeon who did my implants in 2013 and said, I think I might have this. And he dismissed it and said, no, these things are not related. You're just aging, run more, eat less, these kinds of things. And again, I felt a little bit insecure because I'm not a physician. So you want to take that advice. But my gut feeling was there was something wrong. And so I kept searching. And that Facebook group led me to the name Dr. Nicholas Tarola, who is today's guest. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
And this is such an impactful conversation because that Facebook group led me to you. So a lot of women in Nashville had said, I went to Dr. Tarola and I had a completely different experience. And I was like, that sounds what I need to do. So I made an appointment with you guys, and I'll just take our audience through that for a minute because I showed up in your office in November of 2019, completely broken. Honestly, I was wiped out from all of the things I was experiencing physically. It just takes an emotional toll on you. And I walked in and you had a questionnaire. I did the questionnaire. We had a conversation, and I will paraphrase because it's been 6 years, but you said something along the lines of, I can't guarantee that taking these out is going to magically fix all of your problems, but I think you'll feel better. And I left your office and I barely got out of the building without sobbing, cried a lot in my car before I drove off because I was so relieved that someone finally listened and that I felt like I had hope. So I made an appointment with you. The day after Christmas, we took those babies out, and within 2 days, I was like, my eyes were bright again. My food allergies were gone. That is wild to me still. My hormonal issues were gone within 2 or 3 weeks, and it just kept happening. So we're here today because I reached out to you, and I feel so grateful that you said yes. I've thought about you more times than you've thought about me in the last 6 years. This is for sure. But I think, your patients probably all think that we're so grateful that you gave me my life back. And so I want to talk about it with you and really dig into all of the things that women deal with. But before I turn it over to you, I want to say one more thing to our listeners, and that is this is a judgment-free zone, because I know that there are a lot of women out there who, my grandma being one of them, I don't think she'll care that I said that, but hey, Gran, she's had implants for a really long time and she's fine. No issues. So I'm saying this as a preface to say this is a personal experience for a lot of women, but this is not something to say if you have implants, we're not judging. And if you're considering implants, what I would say, and I'll say this at the end of the show too, is talk to Dr. Tarola's team and really make a decision that works for you. So now back to why we're here to talk to you about this. When did you first start hearing about breast implant illness from patients? Or is that where you heard from it?
That term, yes, from patients.
Okay.
I think it was in 2017, 2018. It started with one patient coming in, inquiring about it, having read about that condition online. I had finished training at Vanderbilt in 2011, and all we were told about implants is they're totally safe. You can have certain complications with them, more mechanical issues, rupture, capsular contracture, et cetera. But that the increased risk of any autoimmune-like condition was just non-existent. That was all false information.
So interesting.
So, that's what was in my head the entire time. And that's mainly what you would read about them. So those interactions were probably between me and that patient, or those initial patients, very much like your interaction was with your original surgeon. And I can't remember honestly if the first one that came to my office I dismissed as well. But after a few of them, and me feeling sorry for these patients that were obviously not feeling well, I agreed to do the procedure. Justifying it, I would say most surgeons don't ask their patients, well, why do you want these implants? What's the reason? Is it something you want? Is it something you've thought about for a long time? Is it something your boyfriend, your husband wants?
Yeah.
I would venture to say that no surgeon asks that question. And if they do, it's very few and far between. So, if somebody has a foreign device in their body that we've placed, I think it's very reasonable if a patient's coming in requesting that it be removed, that we remove it. Mean, if it can come down to something as simple as that.
Yeah.
But then, so getting back to those first few patients, what sticks out in my mind, I think most clearly, is one specific patient, but then more followed, that she said what you just said, which was, thank you for giving me my life back after the procedure. The husband came in afterward, said, thank you for giving me my wife back and mother back, for kids. And it was significant. This one particular patient looked horrible, clearly felt horrible. And when she came back from her post-op visits, she was like a new person. And so I'd seen that multiple times, and doing my own reading and research on not breast implant illness, because it wasn't called that at the time, but these autoimmune-like conditions related to breast implants.
Yeah.
There's a ton of information on it even back then. But it's, I would say in recent years, past maybe 5 years, become more and more recognized within the plastic surgery community. I saw it show up for the first time maybe 3 or 4 years ago in our ongoing education from the board.
Really?
So
that's a big change.
But even with that, there's still plenty of surgeons that don't agree that it can cause problems, those kind of problems in patients.
Yeah.
So, it's difficult. It's still difficult, I'm sure, for surgeons, for patients. When I first started doing this procedure, I distinctly remember a couple years later being called by one of my friends and mentors back from Philly, who in a roundabout way was really giving me a hard time and making me feel bad for what I was doing for patients. Same thing, kind of locally with certain surgeons, especially since I trained here.
Yeah.
There were the great majority were not doing the procedure, thought that it didn't exist. And then, as the years went by, more and more surgeons agreed to do the procedure for their patients.
And I think this is not a medical show, but listen, in my mind, I'm always on Grey's Anatomy. So we'll take a moment for this because I think one of the things that stands out in the procedure itself that was interesting as I was learning about this was that there was a difference in you versus someone that said, I'll take them out. So someone would say, yes, I'll take them out. But you actually go a step further, right? And tell me a little bit about that because I think it was important.
Yeah, so it's the capsulectomy part of it.
Okay.
And this is something early on that I didn't think was necessary either. That as long as you get the implant out, that foreign body, whatever the reaction is that those patients are having to it, that should allow them to feel better. And it's still debated whether or not that's true. The most recent big study that came out showed that there was no difference.
Interesting.
Whether, in all three sections of this study, the patients did have their implants out, but in the one, it was just the implants, another part of the capsule, and another all of the capsule. And all those patients basically recovered from a breast implant illness standpoint the same. But I think, and I learned early on that I think there's a huge psychological component to this.
Yes.
And, we all know how anxiety and depression can weigh on us and affect our overall health. So removing that tissue, that capsule, which is just scar tissue around the implant, removing it, I think, gives the patients a peace of mind, that they can go on from this knowing that everything related to that implant is gone, and it allows them to recover. So, that's also something for me that early on, the first year or two, I became more accepting of, and tried to understand it from the patient standpoint. So, I still talk to my patients about implant removal with or without that capsulectomy part of it, explaining that it does come with added risk and, a little bit longer recovery and drains and all these other things that are not comfortable, that again, increase the risk of going back to the operating room for bleeding or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But most of them come in already knowing that they want that. And I learned that if they're coming in knowing that they want that, it's because they've done all this reading and research. And, for the couple that when I first started doing it, I said no to, they went elsewhere and they had the procedure done.
Interesting. Yeah.
So, that just showed me that they're going to have it done regardless.
Yeah. And I love what you said about if someone comes in asking for something to be taken out of their body, why wouldn't we do it? I mean, I've never looked at it that way. And I think that's a really interesting perspective because I think you're probably spot on that the questions aren't asked at the beginning. I think you're absolutely accurate on that. Like why do you want to do this? But then on the flip side, it's interesting that psychological part of it is very real, that you, as a woman who has now decided, I want this out, you want it all out. And I think that was something that I would not have figured out with all of these thousands of women, talking about their own experiences. But I really did appreciate that you gave options, but it was, to your point, like at this point, I was like, I want no trace of this ever again. Let's break up forever, So, and it's funny that you mentioned those drains because one of the things that was wild to me was that's a big debate. Drains or no drains and all of these things in these Facebook groups. But I remember you said you have to, rest, recover, all of the typical surgery things. And I went home and within a few hours, I had more energy than I'd had in months, maybe even a whole year of my life. It was really hard to sit still. But you're sitting there with these crazy drains, and you're like, hey, listen, the more you do, the worse this will be. Sit still. I remember this very clearly. I thought I was doing so good. I did go to Hamilton with drains. I went to the Tennessee Performing Arts Center. I was like, this is fine. No one can see these under my dress. And I had an appointment with you like 2 days later, and you're like, no, they're not coming out. What have you been doing? You've not been sitting still. And I was amazed by that. But I do think that it was fascinating to me that you think after surgery, you're going to want to rest. I had no want to rest. I was ready to go because I had life again. my mom was a really interesting person at that time that she thought this was crazy. Let's be real. Like, she didn't like the implant conversation to begin with, but to have them out, because I thought that was what was making all of these other things happen. People just look at you like you have two heads. And so I think she was very skeptical. And then a few hours after surgery, you know, when you're awake and you're functioning, my mom looked at me and started crying. And she said, I can see you again. Like, your eyes are you again. There's not this shell of a person. And that was a pretty powerful moment to me. So I think you probably get a lot of those after the fact.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. And that, again, that's why I continue to do it.
yeah.
As all those lives that you see changed, and
Yeah.
we still don't know why.
Yeah.
But it happens. I mean, you can see it in front of your eyes. So, you know, it means a lot
Yeah.
to do that, because that's not typically what we do in plastic surgery now. Not, at least not the cosmetic world of it.
Yeah.
The reconstructive for sure. So that's what allowed me to just continue on and, you know, put up with all the things I would hear from my peers and whatnot.
Yeah. And I think that had to be really hard, because you're now saying something that you've actually probably had on your website, right? So I'm thinking 2015, a big thing on your website is breast augmentation. And I think that then to all of a sudden now have something that also says, but I'll also take them out. You had to have a lot of interesting conversations with peers. And I know you said that those patients, you know, when you started kind of considering, yeah, maybe I'll do this, but what was it in your mind that really made it where you thought, I'm going to make this decision? Because you knew you were going to get a lot of grief in your field.
Well, I think the most powerful thing was the women coming back and saying how their lives changed for the better after they were without implants.
Yeah.
That was the biggest driving force. But then, you know, to reinforce it from, you know, a professional standpoint, the literature that's out there supporting that, you know, opening up the initial, back in 2018, opening up one of the implant inserts that comes in the box,
Yeah.
listing all the risks, just like you would have with any medication.
Sure.
You know, listing all the risks. Well, that was there. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been there for a long time. The risk of autoimmune conditions, or
Crazy.
autoimmune-like conditions.
Yeah.
So all those things together just kind of solidified it for me.
Yeah. That's really interesting that it was there all along. But we do kind of dismiss those things. I mean, I think I joke with people that if there's a 1%, right, those warnings that say less than 1% of people, I'm always in it. I mean, I'm so lucky. But I think most people dismiss those because you're in the 99%.
Well, sure. I mean, I'll give you an example. So I never stopped putting in implants, but once I started doing this and learning about the condition and treating the patients, I made sure that was part of my pre-op conversation. So patients coming in for an augmentation, we go through the usual list of potential complications with implants, but then added on breast implant illness and made sure that they understood that.
Yeah.
What it was, what the condition was, the risks. There were no great statistics on how many patients it truly affects, but that it is a risk.
Yeah. I love that you added that. Have you heard from other surgeons who have also added it? Do you think
it's a requirement?
It's a requirement now.
Now, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So hopefully everybody's doing
Wow.
it.
I mean, hopefully. Yeah. That's a long way. We've come a long way in 6 years from when I walked into your office. And the questionnaire that I remember getting at your office was also fascinating to me, because I had been, like I said, back to the original physician and there was no questionnaire. So did you guys come up with that, like, after a few surgeries you decided to implement it?
I made that up just to be able to look back and see what patients were experiencing, and then after the fact, what improved or didn't improve.
Yeah. And boy, it was eye-opening when I kept checking boxes on that. And I'll never forget what that felt like. And one of the things for me was I had bronchitis a lot, which was a really weird thing to just every year. I mean, I just thought this was what normal humans did. You just get this all the time. And I haven't had it since, which is wild. But that's why I think probably from March of 2020 all the way through, every time I thought about how grateful I was that I was able to live my life, it was all of those things. Like, I felt healthier. I was able to take care of myself better. I felt like my immune system was better than it had been in the past. But I think the psychology of it that you talk about is also really important, because mentally I felt very confident in myself again. I didn't have those up and down emotions and all of that, which I really think was critical in 2020 to a different type of survival when you're isolated and it was just me and my dog. And I thought about that several times. I'm like, wow, if this had been last year, I wasn't mentally and psychologically equipped to handle it. So have you had a lot of patients that come back talking about that piece of it too? Like that they were lethargic or depressed and now all of a sudden they have energy for life again?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody's a little different on what symptoms they're having and what improved, but fatigue is a huge one. So patients getting their energy back, that brain fog that patients describe, or
Mm-hmm.
memory issues. A big complaint is GI related. Their gut is affected by it.
Yeah.
Allergies, like you said, food allergies. So those are a lot of the things that we see improve in patients.
Yeah. The food allergies was wild to me, but I did a little, digging into that after the fact, because I remember thinking, gosh, they just went away. As fast as they arrived, they went away. And I was down to very few foods that I like to eat, because most of them were just, like you said, the GI issues, but also, the hives or the whatever it was that came with the different foods. And that was fascinating to me. So, food allergies, GI symptoms, fatigue. Are there any other like common ones that you see often?
Rashes, joint aches, pains, but those are the most common that I
Okay.
mentioned.
Yeah. And it's hard too, because I think people don't realize, like, this is my first time being an adult, right? Like, and so you don't know what symptoms. Fatigue, I would take as a good one, right? Because at some point in life, we all start thinking, well, maybe this is normal.
Right. And a lot of patients get their implants as a young adult,
Yes.
19, 20, 21. And so exactly that. As you age, you think certain things are normal.
Yeah.
Um, whether you have implants or not, some patients,
Yeah.
they'll have a condition, whether it be an allergy or a gut reaction to something, and they'll think that's normal when in fact it's not, but nobody's
Hmm.
told them, because
Yeah.
oftentimes you don't inquire about certain things with other patients or other friends or family, and you just kind
No.
of keep it to yourself and go on. So I think it's similar with implants,
Yeah.
but now there's social media and we're all able to communicate better and share our stories.
Yes. And thankfully, I mean, the women who have been loud about it, I really am so grateful to that group of women that started talking about these things, because I'm not typically one to talk about this kind of stuff, and especially this kind of setting, because I like to have it all together. So there's no reason for anyone to think that everything's not perfect. And that was why it really took me to the point of like no return, where I was like, I'm not functioning. I've called in sick to work too many times to continue doing this. We have to figure this out. But what's funny is you think about the times that you go have a conversation with your doctor, or you're talking about, I'm feeling this way or that. Nobody asked me if I even had implants. And so it was funny that it didn't even come up until I started kind of piecing the things together myself. And I'm glad that that's changed. I'm glad that people are a little more open about these things.
I see it more and more as far as that goes with primary care docs, rheumatologists. Patients are coming in to me for the first time, having already, explored all the things that you did, getting evaluations, labs, studies, seeing specialists to try to
Hmm.
determine what's wrong with them.
Yeah.
And sometimes, well, with increasing frequency, they're coming in saying that their primary care doc or one of these specialists recommended that the implants be removed, because I think they're at a loss. Like your
Yeah.
gynecologist was at a loss. They couldn't
Yes.
figure out what was going on. And so have the implants removed and eliminate that as a source. Because that's
Yeah.
what breast implant illness is. It's a diagnosis of exclusion. There's no test for it.
Yeah.
You can't prove that someone has it. But what we're supposed to do for these patients is make sure that they've undergone some initial evaluation to rule out other common conditions or something that could explain
Hmm.
their symptoms. And when all that comes back negative, like it did for you, normal, then, it's reasonable to say, all right, let's remove these implants and see if you improve.
Yeah. process of elimination. And I think, I do feel like my OBGYN, she was onto something. She wanted to remove something, She was like, my only thought is we remove something. And I do believe that helps me trigger a thought in my head to be like, wait, maybe there is something else we can remove, So I am so grateful that people are starting to just be more honest about it. Okay, so let's switch topics a little bit to something else that I think I also love that people are talking about in 2025, which is weight loss and GLP-1s. And I think, gosh, if we think back to the beginning of this year, I feel like that was like a hush hush topic even a few months ago. It was like, don't say that, But we all have known it's happening. I have some great friends who've had some really good success with really, massive weight loss, 80 to 100 pounds. So is this something that you're seeing in your clinic now? Because my guess is that then the conversations start about, well, now I've got loose skin or things that I want to improve because I feel better. So tell me about this.
For sure. There's a lot of patients coming in within the past year, 2 years, who've lost a lot of weight, 30 pounds, 150 pounds.
Yeah.
And now are left with all the loose skin that you have from losing a lot of weight. It used to be the bariatric patients, patients that had a gastric sleeve or bypass that lost a lot of weight. So that was not nearly as common, those patients coming in, as it is now with the GLP-1 patients.
Yeah.
But they're treated similarly as far as the surgery goes. The most common ones are going to be skin removal from the abdomen or the trunk, the hips, buttock, with a tummy tuck or lower body lift, breast lifts, etc.
Okay, so you start this. Let's do this in layman's terms for a minute. So so you're starting with removing skin, and then you're tucking everything in to make it all work. Is that?
Well, that's what the skin removal is.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's getting rid of all that skin so you don't have to tuck it in anymore.
Oh, nice. No more Spanx. Sorry, Sarah Blakely. What is the recovery process for that like?
It depends on the surgery. The trunk surgery, like a tummy tuck, lower body lift, that's going to be a little more intense than, say, a breast lift. You can do skin removal from the arms, the thighs, and depending on the extent, that'll dictate the recovery time.
Yeah.
But usually for most of these procedures, people are feeling pretty good again at 10 to 14 days.
Oh, okay. That's not bad.
As far as my practice goes, the longest time of activity restrictions is going to be 6 weeks.
Okay.
And that's for the abdominoplasty.
Okay. Six weeks?
6 weeks.
Okay.
But you can return to light activity, a desk job, normal getting around as soon as you feel up to it. So it could be a few days, a week. It's usually not longer than that.
So I've had this conversation with people because I've been so excited that you're coming on the show, and people have said, oh, will you ask, fill in the blank. And one of the questions, because I've lived a lot of places since I met you, I will always call Nashville my home, but, I have friends in so many different cities that have said, well, why would I go anywhere else? Because I have raved about you. And so what do you do for out of town patients? Like when they come in for a procedure, do you have that happen?
Yeah, quite a bit, mainly for the breast implant removal part.
Oh, I bet. Yes. You're kind of famous in that circle. That Facebook group is big. Yes, I think it's Breast Implants by Nicole.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yes, I am terrible with that name, but yes, it's been a minute. But yeah, so I see that people would come in for that. So then how often do they come back? And what does that look like if someone said, I want to go see Dr. Tarola, but I don't live in Nashville?
So we help them find a place locally to stay.
Okay.
Prefer that they come in at least the day before.
Yeah.
Just to make sure I've evaluated them in person.
Mm-hmm.
Stayed at least the first 24 hours after surgery so they can come back the next day, check them, make sure they're okay before they go back.
Yeah.
For local patients, I usually see them 1 week after surgery, 2 weeks, and then 3 months.
Okay.
So the patients that are out of town, it really just depends on what post-op care is required for them, if they have drains or not, and then if they have someone closer to home that can remove those drains.
Yeah.
We'll communicate with them by phone or video. So it depends on the patient.
So that's good though, that you can kind of be flexible with that aftercare if they can be there for that primary part right after surgery. And then is it safe to travel? I mean, I feel like I would have been scared. Don't touch me.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, after surgery, you're at an increased risk for blood clots. So we don't want a patient traveling an extended period of time without getting up, moving
Yeah,
around. That's probably the biggest issue.
that makes sense.
Traveling by itself otherwise is not.
Okay.
Of course, you don't want to be lifting heavy suitcases and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But traveling, as long as you're up, moving around periodically, is generally safe.
The lifting heavy suitcases makes me laugh because I just had a flashback to my friend was supposed to come stay with me and she ended up breaking her toe or something. I said, I'm fine. I really was. I was like, I'm fine. And so my grandma left, my mom left, and my grandma had made me all of these wonderful meals. They're all in my fridge. Great. All we have to do is get them out of the refrigerator and put them in the microwave. This is not hard. Actually, turns out it was really hard.
Yeah, lifting
And
up that high.
I couldn't do it. And I couldn't even open the refrigerator. And I was like, oh, well, this is fun. And so I ordered Publix groceries. And then I went to open my front door and I lived in a condo building. The door was so heavy. I never knew that door was heavy until then. And I said to the guy, I was like, you just have to come in. I can't open the door. And he was so nice. He was like, oh, no problem. He, did everything. But it is a funny thing. You don't realize your abs and, your core part of your body, you use it for everything. You don't realize it until you're
injured. You don't realize it. I know.
You just took me way back in time with that statement about the suitcase. Yeah, no suitcases. So what are the most common procedures besides like the skin, the loose skin, things like that, that you're seeing? Because I'm almost 45. So my friends are always talking about what are we going to do? Joan Rivers wasn't wrong. People who are mad about Joan Rivers just didn't have the money to be Joan Rivers, I mean, we all want to do it. But I think about these things like these wrinkles that start coming in. What do you do about this? Is it like what ages do people get facelifts these days? We're getting real now.
In recent years, I think it's decreased people are coming in at a younger age for it.
Yeah.
But I would say on average in their 50s.
Okay.
Of course, you have some youngers in their 40s, but 50s and 60s.
Do you see mostly women in your practice, or has it changed in the last few years?
No, it's mostly women. I would say 90% women. Yeah,
that makes sense. So, okay, anything else that you feel like we're going into 2026? I mean, it's crazy. We're close to the end of the year here. And I do think people start thinking about what they want to do to improve their lives. And so if someone is out there saying, I want to do these things, what would you tell them to get started? How do they get started with like this journey of, I want to feel my best? Because it's really about that, in my opinion. It's like the way we look, it really does change our confidence, And so it's not just about being vain. It's like at the end of the day, if you want to feel better about yourself, how do you get started? What do you tell someone to look at first?
I always tell people, tell me what concerns you.
Okay.
Because we may see something different in the patient than what they see in the mirror. So I want to know what things bother them. And then I give them options, whether it be surgical or non-surgical, to address those. Because there's so many things out there from a non-surgical standpoint. The surgeries are rather standard. Yeah. But patients have a lot of options these days, but head to toe. I mean, it just depends on what they're wanting to correct. So once I know that, then we talk about all the options. Then you can make a plan. Yeah.
I like that. I think that's a really good way to do it because it gives people the time to think about what it is that they really, what is it that bothers you? And I do appreciate that your practice asks a lot of questions. I think that's so critical because I felt so confident by the time surgery happened. I mean, you're nervous because it's surgery, but I really feel like you guys do such a good job of checking all those boxes. And so then it's like, that you're making the right decision.
We kind of have to, I would say.
Not everybody does it.
I know not everybody does. And I may talk too much, in the consultation compared to what other surgeons do, but I want to find out, again, what I just said, what bothers the patients, what their expectations are. And I want to feel confident that I can meet those expectations and that they have realistic expectations. I think that's probably the most important thing. When I get the sense that they don't, then I maybe sit back down and talk more about what can be accomplished, because we can't always accomplish what the patient wants. Yeah. I'd rather Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just intrigued by that. I didn't think about that. That people come in with unrealistic expectations. We do kind of think of plastic surgeons as magic
Yeah,
workers.
all the time.
Yeah. And then do you have to say to someone, that's not realistic?
Yeah.
That's a hard conversation.
Yes, or turn them away or whatever it might be. That's never easy. You know,
Oh.
it's when I was first starting out, not really knowing how to do that, you know, how to kindly tell someone that we can't give them what they want.
Yeah.
It's still a little challenging depending on the person, but
Yeah.
it's important.
Yeah, it is. It's like you're almost a little bit of a therapist in these moments.
Totally.
It's like,
Plastic surgeons are. Yes.
yeah, because there is so much psychology, I guess, in what we feel about our looks. And
Mhm.
if they're coming to you from a place of really wanting to make drastic changes, I would guess that you have some questions about where are we mentally right now?
Yeah, in a roundabout way, at least.
Yeah. Wow. Those are things I have never thought about. Well, I think it's always good for people to know their options. And I feel like my takeaways from this conversation are, one, advocate for yourself. I think women don't typically do this as well, I think, as we would like to. And you helped me find that confidence for future, for me to really understand that there are physicians out there that are willing to listen. And so it's not a knock to anyone before you, because we're only as good as we can be in that moment, right? And so people all grow. And I think that it's possible that they've all evolved, right? We all evolve. But I do think that it's also a match. You need to be a fit with the person that you're sitting across from as a surgeon and the patient. And for people to feel like they can confidently walk away and say, I can do this. I can put everything in your hands and say, yes, let's go. So I feel like for people to really be confident, advocate for yourself, ask a lot of questions. I think it was great that you guys did not rush me at all, which is just incredible. I know you guys have a lot of people in and out, but I didn't feel any sense of rush. So I think being able to ask a lot of questions is really important. And then I think the final thing, because I did have a lot of people ask before this episode, is tell me where people can find you. Tell me what your website is and what the process is if they say, yes, I want to have a consultation with Dr. Tarola.
You can reach us by our website, which is tarolaplasticsurgery.com, social media, again, just Tarola Plastic Surgery by phone, email, any of those methods.
Yeah,
and
you guys
Casey,
are great.
our coordinator, Casey is fantastic. So reach out to
She
anyone at the
is.
office, but especially her, and she can help, get that process started.
Yeah, I think it's info@tarolaplasticsurgery.com.
That's right. Yeah.
That'll get you to Casey,
That's it.
and never let her go. She's phenomenal. I think she must be superhuman because she's so fast at her responses. So
Yeah, she's unreal.
yeah, she's really fantastic. But I really appreciate you sharing your time today and all of this information. I actually learned some new things, which was so fun. But for me personally, I'm just so thankful that I found you and that I was able to get my life back because of you. So thanks for believing women when they come into your office.
Yeah, I'm glad you're doing better.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Sometimes a girl's gotta find her way on her own, free to roam and make mistakes.